Hello, everyone. Another episode of Natives Helping Natives. This is Harry MacArthur and Bob Thornton. I have a wonderful guest with me today, Jeff Levitetz, and he's going to speak of his life and the things he did, and it's an amazing life, and I'm thrilled that he's here and thrilled to be my friend, and I'll turn it over to Bob now.
All right. And Jeff, we're very excited that you're here. I've heard little bits of your story, but there's something about putting the headset on. It's kind of like we're sitting around the fire singing Kumbaya.
That's right.
So if you would just maybe share with us your start, where you started, what mom and dad and home was like.
Yeah, no, I first of all, thank you for having me. It does mean a lot to me. And it's the first one I've ever done. I did one on a phone call with a friend of mine, but this is real stuff, and it means something to me more now than ever to tell a story that I was always not all that crazy about telling, because you journey back in your life, and the more time you have as we get older, the more you have time to reflect on your life. And while you're working, nothing's a big deal. Obviously, after you're sitting around talking about things 30 years later, 40 years later, you're like, my gosh, I actually did that, or I did this. And you don't look at them as accomplishments. But if I look back at the earliest part of my life, I think what always strikes me the most is the sport that I was forced into, the sport that I didn't really want to do, was basically preordained for me. It was something that was going to happen whether I liked it or not. I was born with one ear. And so my earliest recollections of life was being called little ear, little ear, little ear, little ear. Because you know how kids are really, they're tough. They're very, very tough. So as a little kid, growing up in the 60s, right? 62, 63, when I was old enough to have my first operation and wondered why. Kids are tough, and the earliest impression was I was different, right? Why was I different? Those are the things you think about later. You don't have the aptitude at 5 years old to think about why me. But it was a deformity that my wife found out last year wasn't a genetic deformity. It was based on what they would prescribe women who were pregnant that were getting sick and nauseous. They were giving them a form of antidepressant that basically relaxed them. And so the child in the womb was not moving. There's a name for it. I don't know, but Ruby knows. Just have to ask Ruby about any information. God bless her. But the child's not moving in the womb, and he's resting on that ear, and so the ear doesn't grow. Now, I had an uncle who was in World War II. He was in Darby's Rangers, which was North Africa, and there was a movie written about it. And he was all shot up and came back, a different person. But I loved him. I loved everything about him. He was a character. He was fantastic. But he came back just different, yeah? So we always thought it was genetic, that whatever happened to me, it happened on my mother's side of the family. And I cannot tell you this, I have not talked about this ever, how rough it was as a kid to be small, undersized. My father was a goofball. My grandfather wasn't. My grandfather was the one who pretty much raised me, Charlie. Charlie was my father's father, and literally my greatest friend, from the early years, just always there. And then in the later years, until a year before he died, he lived with me and my ex-wife in Florida. And then when Andrew hit, we had to send him back because we were afraid that, the storm could be really bad, and we didn't know how he'd be able to handle it. And he got pneumonia, and he wasn't able to come back. He was living with his sister, my aunt. So I was raised in Deerfield, Illinois, which is a blue-collar suburb outside of Chicago. It was, on one hand, tough being young, little, one ear. But on the other hand, I was a real good hockey player. So I always had that in my back pocket. I started skating when I was 5 years old. I got really good at it. And it didn't matter what size I was because I could outskate anybody. So I went from the Deerfield Hockey League to the Chicago Minor Hawks. And then there's this cutoff point in a lot of sports at 13, 14 where, it gets real, right? And it gets real again in college. But if we're staying on the, before that, I was used to being good at this one sport. And that was kind of my savior. That was my safe place. If I was forced to play Little League, my father coached it. Then I was forced to play on a better team and I wasn't good enough for it. So he always wanted the accolades of me doing something, but he was living through me as an alcoholic. And my mother, my father was raised in Winnetka, Illinois, which was a pretty wealthy suburb, outside of Chicago, much more so than where I was raised in Deerfield. And he was kind of a nut job. He was a goofball. He was the son of a fairly wealthy man. My grandfather had 2 brothers, and the 3 of them started a great Western laundry company in the 20s. And I mean, they were OGs, right? And Grandpa Charlie was the guy who was running the inside operations. So he was not the guy that I became. He wasn't the salesman. He was, we start at this time, we leave at this, you know what I mean? And everyone loved him, and you got to admire that type of, individual. So he did well. I don't think it was generational wealth, but he got my father into a water business because I don't know why. He just did. And my father was somebody that I just saw as someone who took me to hockey games, basically, and then I'm Jewish, never had to go to the Sunday school as long as I had a good game Saturday night. And I always had a good game on Saturday night. I'm going to tell you that right now. It wasn't my deal. Never understood it. Boy, I've been through a few things that makes me believe in God in the last 35 years and 32 orthopedic operations. I can tell you that getting up from every one of those has been challenging. But, it's funny. My mother was a small town, Muskegon, Michigan, native. My grandfather on her side, he died in 1966, was a furrier from Russia who immigrated and was on a boat at 17. Someone gave him a banana. He didn't know what to do with it. Okay. My grandmother on my mother's side immigrated from Poland. It turns out that her maiden name, Godelski, that her family were peddlers. They were merchant peddlers along the seaboard there, Michigan, Benton Harbor and Muskegon and down in the Grand Rapids and all that stuff. Again, these are things I've never talked about in my life. And I'm afraid to really take a deep dive on one of those 23andMe things because I just like to move forward in my life. Too much looking back sometimes will make you question some things. And maybe, I don't know why, it's not something that I really care to do, So I had a father who liked to drink, he liked to party, a mother who never liked to leave the house. It was later realized that she had a mental illness. She was a shut-in. She didn't like to leave. If we had to go into our local town, which was 5 blocks away, it wasn't even a bike ride, really, that it was a whole big to-do. I mean, getting dressed up, getting in the car, super nervous, kind of yelling and screaming at us if she was agitated at all because she had to know kind of where everything was. And you, as a kid, don't see early signs of a train wreck. But I will tell you that a couple of years ago, I happened to stumble upon their wedding album in one of the moves I've made in the last few years. And the whole story of when they met and when they, she got pinned, meaning I guess they're official back in the 50s, and to the point where they were engaged to be married and then married, he had to go off to Anchorage, go station there. I don't think they knew each other for 3 months. I don't think they spent 90 days together, but that's how things were done. And of course, society said, you pick your partner, you stay together. I mean, think about relationships, and you think about our country at 250 years next year. It's brand new. And people wonder why everything's so screwed up. It's brand new. It's not old. You go to Italy, you go into a building, see houses that are 700 years old. They don't knock them down after 30 years because the land's worth so much money. That doesn't happen. So I had these two parents, mother who was loving, father that wasn't his deal, and then this kind of a train wreck came to a head. Oh, I would say I was 12, 13. I was playing hockey, and I always felt guilty that he met someone who played on the same team, the mother, and they had an affair, and they ended up getting married. Broke my mom, broke her spirit, and she was diagnosed with cancer that I wasn't told about. And they said that she had a bad hip, and she was in the hospital. And I'll get to that part. But as I stay in the early years, that little ear thing was a big deal. That was a big deal. That hurt, And so just the idea that you were so different, like an elephant man, it was severely deformed. Now, one operation at 5, okay. At 6, they found a bone tumor, a cancerous bone tumor growing on my foot. Cut that off at 6. 7, the bone tumor comes back, and I have to do more plastic surgery on the ear, 2 of them at the same time. And the way they used to do it, Evanston Hospital, any hospital, is I would scratch at this ear because it itched, and your head's wrapped. And when you're a kid, what are you going to do? You're going to rip at it. So my only memory of being super young had to be at 7 when my father, for some reason, had the station wagon with the wood paneling on the side. And he had a blue light like he was a cop that he could take and put it on the dashboard. I don't know what he thought he was, but the guy was a lunatic. And all I remember was getting picked up in the middle of the night, thrown into the car, and there's blood everywhere. I had scratched through the stitches. So back to the hospital, and I do remember that what they did is they put splints on my arms so you couldn't bend them. And when I say chains, this wasn't barbaric and there was no abuse, okay? But I guess back then they just kind of chained them to the back of the posts on the bed in the hospital. And so that you wouldn't scratch at it, and you'd still try. But I remember coming in, my father coming in one day, I remember it very vividly. And we were talking about, I felt sorry for myself. And he said, well, the kid in the next bed, he's had 15 operations already. Stop feeling sorry for yourself. So admittedly, there was some good that came out of him. I don't know that he meant it or he knew what he was saying or how profound some of the things he said. But if you fast forward then out of this youth where, okay, you're a real good, well-known hockey player, okay, which makes you forget about being a young, one-eared, little tiny guy. And you enter the high school atmosphere, okay, in 1971, as a 5-foot or 4'11" kid who's 82 pounds, okay? Before I get there, if I re-rolled the clock one extra year, while I was playing hockey and it was being decided for me whether I was going to move to Toronto to play, the scouts, a guy named Ren Blair, who was the general manager for the Minnesota North Stars, he ran this camp, Halliburton Hockey Haven. And we became kind of good friends with him, and he said to my father, and I don't know if this was BS or not, well, if Jeff gets bigger, we can get him in the juniors in Toronto. Well, that's all you had to say to my father. The next thing I know, I'm going to some guy that you don't know as a kid who he is, but he's a growth doctor, which means he's a quack, okay? And I'm taking 60 Novakelp seaweed pills a day, 20 in the morning, 20 at lunch, 20 at dinner. Big old monster capsules that were filled with this stuff. And I saved myself because what actually happened was the funniest thing in the world is that every year you had to get a school physical, right? In order to go to class, right? You had to get a physical.
Yeah, I remember.
Knocks on your knee kicks out. You're a kid. Nothing's wrong with me. There'll never be anything wrong with me. And I remember they weighted me and they measured me. And this was a day after I went to the growth doctor, who I saw every 3 months, who was forcing these capsules down my throat. So I thought it was funny that when I went to the real doctor, I was 4'11", and weighed 79 pounds. But the day before, I was 5'1" and I weighed 86 pounds. So my father I call Carl. So if I refer to him as Carl, that's from probably mid-teens. That's how I know him as. I said, Carl, and here I'm 13, calling him Carl. I go, something's wrong here. I said, yesterday I was bigger. Today I'm normal size. You think it has anything to do with this guy with the growth pills trying to gin up the stats a little bit so that, this is working? And we never went back to the growth doctor again.
Thank God.
Never heard about him again. But then it was on to the next challenge. And the next challenge was I got cut from the Chicago Minor Hawks going into the Bantam year. That's 14. And it just rocked me. And it had everything to do with the kids were catching up to me, getting a little quicker, right? And so I was good. I worked hard at it, but I was naturally good at it. And it taught you that, I was never cocky. I was never somebody who was I'm great at this or that. I was a fairly quiet kid. But I was starting all over again. And the next chapter, which I didn't realize I was going to be doing, was my father said, you're going to wrestle. I didn't know anything about wrestling, but we had, I think, 1 week of it every year in gym class in 7th and 8th grade. And you're wrestling. That's it. So, okay, you sign up, you go. And I remember a kid on Pine Avenue and Deerfield Road where I lived, where we got the bus. And I said, I'm going to go out for the wrestling team. He says, you'll never make it. You'll never make it. Those kids come in, they go in, they're never seen again. That's just the toughest thing in the world. We had these gray T-shirts, gray shorts, like these burlap leggings, that just retain so much sweat that you actually probably did weigh 5 pounds more by the time you were done. And freshmen and sophomores that weren't varsity wrestled in a room next to the gymnastic thing. And I got songs in my head that were Russian theme songs that I to this day, I start humming these things that were played every day, 17 times a day. Da, 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 da. I'm like, that's 55 years ago. It's like, and I can still see the guy with the handlebar mustache that was the gymnastics coach. They're all wearing gray. They're all wearing these short shorts. And walk it off, shake it off, and I'm in this on a wrestling mat that to me looks like a airplane field, like it's 100 times bigger than me. And I still have the schedule for my freshman year. First match was 1971 at Evanston High School, and I must have told Carl it was like at 7 in the morning. What kid remembers anything? And it was a Xerox copy. When I say Xerox, it had the blue ink, the 3 carbons.
I remember those.
So recently I saw it in some box, right? So that was the first match. It was over so fast you wouldn't have known it hit you. Boom, I'm pinned. That's it. And a long-standing tradition, long enough for me anyways, that year was that I would go back to the bench. Now, the lowest weight class was 98 pounds, so I was at a pretty competitive disadvantage at 82 pounds. Never wrestled, didn't know what I was doing, didn't care much for it. So I'm not learning, it's not like, wow, this is it. I want to go to the Olympics. I couldn't have given a crap less about it, okay? But I knew that was what I was told to do. You're going to do it. That's it. So a long-standing tradition was that every time I walked off the mat, I'd go sit down on the bench. And after the first time, I would run a joke in my head. I'd look up in the stands. I'd see him, and he'd go, you suck, and he'd get up and he'd leave. Okay. So that was my recollection of my freshman year in high school. You suck. But I was smart enough to play the game that I wouldn't look at him for.
You make him sit there waiting.
F him. Yeah, I would. So it was 98 pounds through heavyweight. I got to the point where I was really good at waiting until like about 167 pounds. And I'd look up and he'd be looking right at me. You suck. And then out he went. It was tough, but for whatever reason, I felt like I'd been through enough. I'd always been scared. There was always screaming and yelling in our house. It never ended. I'd always sleep on my left ear. That would take the sting away. I couldn't hear anyway. I'm completely deaf on the right side. And, we'll get to all the sweet stuff, but I've never in my life talked about these things to anybody, right? And, the kind of kinship you get with someone like Harry and some people, you just connect immediately. And you know that you're in the right place. You just know that God put you in the right place. I mean, I've been put in a lot of right places that have involved me being successfully financially, but emotionally, not so much. Yeah. So, it's important that I'm talking about this because it's really the foundation to which everything sits in my life on. So this "you suck" thing was pretty rough. And then I went out my sophomore year, but I never went to camps. I mean, there was no guiding light that said, if you want to get better, wrestle, right? This became abundantly clear to me when I did the world sit-up record long time later. If you want to do something, just do that, okay, and get good at that. And there'll be a million different people to tell you why you should lift weights and do this, but, there's got to be somebody that sees something in you that says, this kid's different. I got to train him different. I got to do things. We don't all fit a size, right? So by my sophomore year, I come out and I'm about 96 pounds. But I learned very quickly that you don't bring a vanilla milkshake to the locker room 20 minutes before the rest of the team has to weigh in, right? They're not eating and they're not happy. And how do I know? I mean, Christ, I could have gotten on the scale my freshman year with a barbell, dumbbells, and an elephant, and I wouldn't have made 98 pounds. So I'm the most joyful kid. I'm playful. I'm having fun. Everybody on the team likes me. I like everybody on the team. But yet here I am. I've got my, I stopped at McDonald's or whatever. Someone brought me a sandwich, and they're like, get that out of here, or you're going to get your head taken off. And I was like, gosh, why is everyone so angry and bitter? And, varsity uniforms were white and different. Girls looked at you different. You're right. So I had 6 varsity matches that year, and I won 4 out of the 6. And so I was feeling good. I was feeling good. I was feeling really, really good about where this was going, not realizing I was about ready to get hit right in the head with a frying pan the next year. I remember going into my junior year of high school with a girlfriend, and I didn't know what I was doing. I had no guidance. I didn't know how to act. I just remember going on a date to a pizza place. It'll come to me, the name of it. They just closed. It was open for 100 years in Lake Forest, Illinois. And on my first date, I'm so deathly scared of anything. My whole MO is I'm afraid of everything. My father, my mother, who I loved and adored, but afraid because I don't know what kind of mood I'm going to get. And I remember sitting down like this, and she's sitting across, and a big old guy like you, Bob, sits down, and I guess the chair was too close to the table, and he moved it back, and he got in it, and he kind of got in it. I'm pinned against the table, and my rib cage is sticking against this, and I'm on my first date. I am scared to death. I don't want to move back and have this guy punch me. I don't know what to say to the poor gal, my mother told me when I went into high school, if anyone ever offers you a marijuana cigarette, that's what she called it, you go to the authorities of that school right away. I would have my ass jumbo kicked up and down. I would be a human mob.
In the 70s.
71, right? We had athletes sat outside the cafeteria on one group of radiators, and we called them the freaks, although they were mostly our friends. We're on the one that went down this hall. And they were actually nice people. It was a great time because if somebody was kind of a pothead or not, we were all friends. We didn't judge anybody. It's just like you were taught not to be that. You're not going to be that. It doesn't make them bad people, though. You know what I mean? So I go on this date, and I liked her. She liked me. I didn't ask her to prom. I was so afraid I didn't know what to do. So she obviously runs, she's dating a basketball player or whatever. And I'm like, yeah, I figured it would turn out that way. I don't know what I'm doing anyways, right? And I'm kind of going into this period where, the music of the 70s, the black artists and Cornelius Brothers and Sister Rose, and all these great acts. They're all on the radio, and the only radio station is an AM WLS, right? I've got a Pinto that I use. That was my mother's Pinto. And one radio station, tank of gas, 25 cents. It's all great. Everything's fantastic. I felt like, culturally things were changing and it was kind of cool, but I was all alone. I remember being all alone. I remember not really understanding what was going on with my mom, the mood swings. She was less present because she was getting sicker. She knew that she had cancer. I didn't know. I didn't know until 2 weeks before she died she had cancer. People go into the hospital back then, and they would stay in the hospital. There was no in and out, okay? So, as it got close to wrestling season, she ended up in a hospital in Lake Forest. And it was me and my sister. She was a freshman in high school, and she liked to smoke pot, and that was not something I was going to do. And we lived in a house, in a typical suburban home. We didn't want for anything. We weren't poor. We weren't rich. And we lived next to a town called Highland Park that, a little uppity, right? They looked down at people. It was the first time I saw a class structure, right? And I had an uncle who lived there, and he didn't care much for me or my sister because we didn't fit into his social strata. He was a lawyer. And we were the village idiots that were never going to go anywhere. And I would build up this anger in my tank, this anger. And it kept building and building and building. And then wrestling season started. And I had a coach who changed my life. I still talk to him. He's 84 now. His name's Steve Combs. Steve was in the Olympics in 1968. So now he's coaching me in 73. That's not far removed. That's one cycle, but that's not bad back then. The biggest legs I'd ever seen. I'd never seen a human being this big, handsome, legs the size of tree trunks. And we had another coach named Kent Johansson, whose arms were bigger than my body. And they were the coaches. Now, when you wrestled varsity, you went into a room that was probably 20 feet wide by 40 feet long, and the door shut behind it. And if you even opened that door and you weren't a wrestler, you'd hear, "Who are you and what are you doing here?" Whoa. Now you're talking about a kid who's scared, that's learning how to get angry, right? And that anger is going to do me well later on, but I'm scared to death of everything. But as a sophomore, you wrestle varsity, it's all cake, right? If you win, you win. If you don't, you're still varsity. It's all good. So now I've got this thing where I'm home, I'm doing dishes, I'm cleaning the house. Grandpa Charlie gave me $20 every Friday night for food, which was more than enough. And my sister and I lived there. She lived in what I call the opium den. If you opened her door, you'd be high. And then wrestling season starts. And for the first time, I have to cut weight. For the first time, I'm the guy who's pissed off at the little guy who brings in the sandwich before me. Okay? So I was 117 pounds, and Coach wanted me at 105. Doesn't seem like a lot of weight, but as a percentage of your body weight, as you would know, that's the big factor. If you're 167 pounds and you lose 10, it's really easily doable. And as I learned from the national teams and everything, it's water. But back then, if it's not regulated and controlled, your kidneys can shut down, you can run a high fever, all this stuff. So then my whole life became about making that weight. It wasn't about wrestling. I didn't care about wrestling. But being in that room when he would go off, and he would on a daily basis inevitably go into a tangent on a life skill that was great for us because we weren't wrestling, right? We're going to get back to it. But he would always equate things, like he would say, I don't care how good you are, but if you are going to wrestle this Friday night, a like opponent, let's say your record's 10-10, and you gave it everything you had Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, I know that he's not going to beat you. Because if you gave it everything you had, you're not going to quit. Because if you gave it more than he did, why would you let him beat you? Bam! Like hits me like a lead weight. And then the clarity comes. And I find myself attracted to the message, not the wrestling. but I have to do the wrestling to hear the message, to be in the room, right? So the season goes on, and I'm about as average as you can get. I'm sorry to disappoint you. I wish I could tell you how great I was, okay? I'd win, I'd lose, I'd win, I'd lose, I'd win, I'd lose. So we go into Thanksgiving, and right around Christmas, a lot of stuff started to happen. The season starts in November. You would think November was 7 years long when you're a kid, right? I mean, it lasts forever. It's just like a never-ending path. And then December heats up. In the middle of December, we're getting ready for a huge tournament called the Waukegan Open. That's a badass tournament. And I'm going to wrestle for him at 105 pounds. And then 3 weeks later, we're going to get ready for district, sectional, and state tournament. I'm not thinking about any of this. I'm seeing that my mom's not around at all. She's in the hospital. Nobody's kind of telling me what's going on. I'm not feeling good about anything. I think I need a change. I want to go back to hockey. I don't like the pressure this coach is putting on me. I don't like it. It's not fair. Him, like my uncle and my father, everybody's out to get me. But I'm not feeling sorry for myself. I really think that, this is the cards that I was drawing. And so I remember going to the Deerfield Bubble, which was the first inside, you could say, hockey rink outside of Chicago. There were very few. And it was a bubble. It was a blown-up bubble. And I remember going there and watching the Deerfield High School kids practice. And I'm measuring them. I'm watching them skate, doing blue line drills, back to center line, back to blue line. I'm like, yeah, I could do this. I come right back. I could make this team. I know it. I hadn't skated in 2 years. And I don't know what called me. I swear to God, Bob, I have no idea. But for whatever reason, I just said, I'm not doing any of it. Okay? I went back to wrestling practice to quit. And that week, this coach rode me like a Shetland pony. This guy, he's on me. And I can't take it. So he stops a wrestling practice. Now, there's probably 25 varsity athletes, 30, between the ones that are on the team vying for the team. He says, Jeff, come on up. And I come up, and Drew Meshes, who's my teammate through my whole 4 years, would tell you the story. If I didn't tell you, he'd tell you the story verbatim. And he said to me, how you doing? And I my father would always say I was a mopey kid. I don't think I was an outgoing kid. I became outgoing as a means for survival. And he says, oh, you always like it when it rains and all that. That was my father's thing. So the coach says, Jeff, you all right? I'm like, nah, I'm okay. That's the last I remember. I don't remember what happened after that. He beat the living shit out of me, threw me up and down the room, throwing me up and down. Coaches had to separate him. You mother effer, you won't give me the effort, blah, 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 blah. Why don't you just quit? You're no good. Why don't you just live up to your potential? Why don't you just do it? Part of them didn't know you're losing that kind of weight and taking 12 X-Lax every night.
Jesus.
And not eating, because no one's I have no one to tell me, eat a little. You can eat up until Wednesday and then diet down, which is good, but don't just starve yourself. And, my kidneys were shutting down. I was peeing blood, and I didn't care. I just, okay, you want me to wrestle, I'll wrestle, right? You want me to lose weight, I'll lose weight. But none of it was a means to an end. I was doing it because I was told to do it. And there was no light that I was looking at that was there for me. It was all being told what to do. He got me lit up, okay? And I was like, all right. I walked away. He didn't allow me in a room for 2 weeks, didn't allow me to come back to wrestle in Waukegan. I was going to quit, but I got angry. I came back, wrestled a dual meet after the first of the year, go to get my uniform. There's a JV uniform waiting for me right there.
Wow.
You son of a bitch. You're going to put me on a JV roster, right, with all my friends and all those girls and everybody. Because look, if you're varsity and you're fairly good, you're a stud, right? I mean, that's it. Once you've wrestled, everything else is easy. And every kid that's not wrestled in high school will tell you that if you're a wrestler, you're kind of a badass. I like that, okay? Even though I probably wasn't. Yeah, they had to put on the old 1960s tights that day. And it was a forfeit. They didn't have anyone to wrestle. on the other side, JV. They raised my hand. I walked off. I couldn't watch my friends wrestle that night. The next week was the district tournament. So the way it worked, they had districts, sectionals, state. Okay? If you got the sectionals, you were a made wrestler for life. If you were the top two that got the sectional, you could easily just drop off the face of the earth and milk that forever. Well, I got the sectionals. Now it's four go to sectionals, 4 go to state. It's not such a big deal anymore. But back then, it was just wow. So long story short, I go into districts, no expectations, win my first match. Second match, I cradle a kid, beat him 2-1 to get in the finals. I don't know why I'm in the final. I have no idea what I'm doing there. I am so uncomfortable being there. I lose 2-1, but I move on to sectionals. What I noticed was there was none of this, you suck. That went away. Coach was not in my corner. I wouldn't allow him. At that point, I went to Jamie Harrington, who was the JV coach. I said, you sit in that corner with me, okay? But really, Steve Combs was smart enough to know that was going to happen anyways. He reminds me a lot of you. And so he didn't. So my hand to God, this story is so incredible. I just don't even know how to explain the reality, but I have the proof. I have the poster in my weight room in Jackson, Wyoming, that the next week was the week where you're going to lay down, get done with cutting weight, okay? All you got to do is show up, get pinned twice, get over with this, and you qualified for sectionals, and you're going to be able to eat until next November, okay? And this is mid-February. I'm the happiest guy in the world. I'm going to get this over with. I see Grandpa Charlie in the stands. I go over to him. My first opponent was a kid named Kid Eccles, okay? I only remember it because I've read the board 1 billion times in my life, and this is my reference point to everything else I ever did. So my grandfather comes down to me, and he says, yeah, the guy you're going to wrestle in the first match, his mom and dad are sitting below me. They don't know me, but they saying that he's got an easy first match. Because my record was 11-10 on the board. His was 23-2.
Wow. Okay.
He took me down, and that was the divine intervention. There was a moment where the anger poured out, where the thinking stopped, where the fear went away. I beat him 10-2.
Yes.
And I was not in my own body. I was not. And the next match, Mark Marinero, 23-2. And I beat him. I'm beating him 5-0. I end up winning 6-3, I think the board says.
Nice.
He was the toughest kid in the tournament. Now, what happened was there was an ice storm, so the tournament got moved. It was supposed to be Friday, Saturday. All hell, had fury on Chicago. There was an ice storm. The schools closed. So this kills us. So the first matches were Saturday, and then the finals were going to be Monday. You couldn't punish someone worse. So now I'm in the finals of a tournament I shouldn't even be in. And the year before, I'm watching this at Evanston High School, and I remember Vito V and what was his name? Tony DeGidia. These are guys I ended up wrestling in the state tournament the next year. I was like, you'll never get there. Like in my mind, the year before, I'm like, you'll never get to that level. And now I'm in the finals of that tournament. Jesse Watson, Woodstock, Illinois. Okay, 23-1. I beat him 11-2 that night.
Wow.
I beat the living shit out of him. I beat him like a drum, like a steel kettle drum. I beat the shit out of him. Okay? And it was the easiest thing I ever did. Coach Lohman's looking at me different. Coach Johansson's looking at me different. Coach Combs, nowhere to be seen because I got Jamie Harrington in my corner, and he's understanding, stay away from the kid. Little does he know that my mom's dying. Little do I know that my mom's dying. At that point, I had a pretty good idea that things were going drastically wrong. I'd heard some rumors that things were getting bad. That was my wrestling moment. The next week, I went downstate with my regular body. I lost my first 2 matches. I was out. But I went downstate, and I've used it my whole life as I'm an all-state wrestler.
There you go.
But why was it that I wasn't good enough to win it? Well, Combs, in his wisdom, was this guy that was just always selling you on life skills, right? I knew the handshake. I knew that from my grandfather. I knew the eye contact, grew up that way, right? Knew to tuck your shirt in because I was always scared. And I was a pleaser. I'm going to do whatever you want me to do because I want someone to recognize me as a kid, maybe and give me an opportunity to do something, okay? So my mom dies in April 3rd of 74. In the week, that was spring break week. And my sister was in Florida because I guess somebody wanted her to not be there. My father told her to go with her friend, paid for her to go to spring break in Fort Lauderdale. And I was home with a nurse that I'd never met. They were taking shifts. Knocked on my door, your mom's gone. She was in the living room. She came home for the last 2 weeks. And that's when I knew that it was bad. And then she died. And I didn't know what to do. What are you supposed to do? Who do you call? She's in a hospital bed in the living room and she's gone now, right? Call Charlie, doesn't answer the phone. I get my aunt on the phone. She comes over. An ambulance comes. And I was okay until they put the sheet over her, you know. And, I love my mom, but my mom was very disturbed by that point. She had just lost it. And I had heard later that I would go see friends, that lived, I played hockey with that lived in Berwyn, which was 40 minutes away and stuff like that. And, that the police had called and, police had come and gotten her and put her into, mental institution or whatever. And that kind of stayed away from me. And I really don't want to know that, right? I've morphed into whatever that was, is what it was. But I remember the week after that, my coach called me into the locker room and he was bawling his eyes out. And I didn't know what was going on. And he said, "Look, Jeff, I didn't know your mom was sick. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry for what I put you through." And I said, "Coach, you made me so angry that I realized my potential. You always said that cars are built with gears for a reason. Humans can have as many as they want in their mind. Okay? I can shift 7, 8, 9, 10. Okay? Whatever you need me to do, I'm going to make it happen. Okay? Number one, I can eat. I can drink this shit, this iced tea. I'm sorry, I swore. I can drink this until the cows come home, okay? That everything is possible because I wrestled and I starved myself to death. And I was miserable when every other kid wasn't. And that was my MO. I mean, everything was easy. I went to Alabama. I wrestled for a couple of years. I was okay. I wasn't great. But the second chapter of how I got to where we are, and I'm making this story long. I hope I'm not making it too long.
No, we're along for the ride.
But I've never said that, and I had to say it so you understand the context of the story. Because the intensity comes from all that pent-up anger. So my junior year in high school, I'm in 9th period of the day, which means if you're still there, you're getting tutored. Or you're doing the tutoring. Now, obviously, I'm not smart enough to do the tutoring, so I'm getting tutored in French. Why we took French? First of all, no one took Spanish. Everyone laughed. Well, who would ever speak Spanish?
I remember those days.
The French guys got their due because I don't think they teach it anymore, right? So anyways, I got a tutor who's my age named Kent Killalay. Okay, he's one of those pimply-faced geniuses, big, fat kid. Not that there's anything wrong with that. But it was record day at school. And at the homeroom, they announced, hey, if you want to, do a school record, which were big back then, push-ups, sit-ups, pull-ups, whatever they came up with, burpees, whatever it was. And our school's sit-up record was 3,601, okay? Now, I don't know what the rules were, but I just assumed you just did them until you were done, right? You didn't stop or anything like that. There was no rule book that said, this is how you do sit-ups. There was no school to go to learn how to do sit-ups. Back then, you had the presidential mat. Remember the purple mats?
I remember it well.
The mats were, you might as well not just had a towel. There was no padding to the mat. It just really condensed to a floor, and it gave you the 12 exercises that you had to do in order to pass PE.
Presidential fitness test.
Yeah, you had to do it. Yeah. You didn't have an option. You had to do it, right? So I did the 100 sit-ups, as part of that. That was no big deal. So this kid, I just looked at him. I wasn't even thinking about it. And I don't know where the joke popped out, but I said to him, I think I'll stay after school. Now, this is after all day of thinking about this, and do the school sit-up records, 3,601. And he looked up without a thought and said, you couldn't do it in a million years.
Oh, best thing to say to you.
That little anger and little Jeffy. Okay. Right? Okay. So I went after school. I sat down. I did 500. And Coach Lohman, who was the freshman wrestling coach, said, "No, we got to stop." And I said, "Why?" He says, "Well, first, you're bleeding all over the place. Your butt cheeks are rubbing together and bleeding. And we really want to get your mom or dad to sign a parental form." So could you imagine a look on my mom's face when I get home at like 4:30, which is late, and I'm with a big giant coach who's driving me to my house because the buses are gone now, right?
Right.
"Jeff, what did you do?" "No, he didn't do anything wrong, ma'am. He's attempting to do this. We really need you to sign the parental consent form," which he did. And I went upstairs and I did another 500 and was bleeding all over the mat.
Jeepers.
And I was so sore I couldn't do it for 2 weeks. I came back, I sat down, and I did 4,000. And then the next day, nonstop. And the rules that we kind of made were that your hands were laced. You didn't break them. I would never thought of breaking it. Once you started, I mean, if it's consecutive to me, it means that you're doing it without stopping. You're not going to get up and wipe your face. So maybe it was just the format that we used, that hands are on top of the head and elbows hit the mat, elbows hit your legs, hit your knees. And so the next year I did 6,000. And then after college wrestling, 2 years into that, my high school career flamed out with my high school coach at the time leaving to start what became USA Wrestling. Coach Combs left my high school after my junior year, after we had this talk about, I'm so sorry about your mom and everything, and you're a good kid, you'll do well. And once he left, the coach I had was great, Kent Johansson, but he was never going to get the anger out.
Yep.
So the next year was kind of like, I lost 4 or 5 matches. I really didn't even want to go downstate. I was so tired of cutting weight. I was so sick all the time. I was just tired of it. But, Alabama liked me, and I went there. I took a scholarship there, went down there, wrestled for a couple of years, did pretty good. I was actually behind I think he was a 4-time SEC champ from Indiana. Good kid. I wrestled him. I beat him every time I wrestled him. But I wrestled him when I weighed like 136. We're both 136, 140, getting ready to cut down to 126. I started thinking, wow, I could have been pretty good if I'd just gone up a couple weight classes. And if I had any guidance, so that my saving grace in the sport is that, in my mind, I could have been better than I was, right? So after the college career is over, I decided I'm going to go back for one last shot, and I'm going to do a world record for sit-ups. Okay, the world record at the time was 14,004 that Guinness had, and it was not consecutive. So you could take a 5-minute break every hour. I met a wonderful man named Hank Leonard, who's still alive. He's struggling a little bit. He's 93, and he was the vice president of the bank, First National Bank of Tuscaloosa, Alabama. He became my mentor and a believer. He didn't believe I could do it. He had to call the athletic director at my high school. He got behind this thing, and we raised $3,500 for the American Cancer Society for my mother's benefit in 1977, and I think it was like April 9th. So now this gets to the good stuff, right? Because this is where there's no money involved, but you're learning to get good. And you get good by taking a piece of tissue that's compressed into 1,000 layers, and you start peeling back the layers. Everyone wants to be the best now. You got to pay the price. A lot of people like the beginning. It's sexy. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that with my life, blah, 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 blah. It's a dream. It's not a goal unless you're doing something towards it every day. I'm going to quit smoking. All right, start now. No, I'm going to do it Monday. Going to have a big dinner Saturday night and a couple smokes Sunday. I'll start. No, do it right now. If you really have a goal to quit, don't wait. They don't have the guts to do it, right? They made a goal that's a dream. It's a dream until it becomes a goal. If you're not working on your goals every day, they're dreams. That's all they are. Sorry.
No, you
can't help it.
You are spot on. You're spot on.
And like people get a job and they're in college and they work for a pharmaceutical company. I actually really saw this happen. I'll get back to the story, but it's a good characterization of what happens in life. Is I go to this old doctor and he's got one of those sliding windows like the old doctors did. Yep. Don't slam the window, and you got a crotchety old girl nurse or whatever sitting behind that counter. And, you open it. I am here for my appointment. And I'm sitting there one day, and this kid looked like he probably played college ball, all buttoned up, and he's working for Abbott Labs or Lilly or somebody. He comes in, he opens the window. Hi, I'm with slam right shut, right? Well, he's there to sell drugs to this doctor, and he's new. That's his reality, right? So for 4 years in high school, he was probably the man. For 4 years in college, he probably was in a fraternity. He was still the man. And then mom and dad pats him on the butt. Hey, all right, bye. Get an apartment. You got a job. Here's a couple suit coats and some ties. And let the world reject you a million times now that we've coddled you so much, okay? Even in those days, right, when you think of what universities were there to do, right, unless you were in athletics. I remember that vision so vividly of this guy getting rejected. And then sitting down, and I'm looking at him, I go, hey, man, don't get so down. It's a numbers game, man. You know, it's not about the doctor. It's about the nurse. Do you know what the nurse likes? You know, she's going to like donuts. Bring them next time. She's not going to yell at you. At least try. It's not the medicine you're selling. The medicine sells itself. It's you selling her so you can get to the doctor. And that was my perception, okay? So those perceptions came from a fourth grade 9-year-old cop comes into our class one day, and he says, he gives a speech. A great teacher, I don't remember her name, but I'm so glad she did this. And then the guy leaves the room for about 5 minutes. She just write down what the guy was wearing. I go, God, dang it. Man, I missed it. So these are things that were resonating with me. You don't realize it, but they're little parts of who you're going to become. Why was I so upset? I felt like I should have known better. I should have looked to see what his shoes looked like, what color his pants. That was the assignment. That's why he was there. He was talking about detective work and what detectives do. And I said, I'm going to be self-aware for the rest of my life. It bothered me that much that it molded the personality, right? So now you go back to being self-aware, being angry, these things, these hallmarks. You can't do it. You're no good. Your uncle tells you you're no good. Your father's reinforcing that stuff. And all I'm doing are sit-ups. It's not a big deal. So I got to convince these people I can do this. And then the wrestling room I went to, and I would do 1,000 a day, 4 days a week, and I would call the time. So if you want to be really good at this, Jeff, then you need to know you want to do it in 10 hours or 8 hours or 12 hours. And I chose 8. So every day I did it. Not only did I do the sit-ups, and everyone thought that was the big part, but it was the process. The process was, I'm going to do it in 46 minutes. I'm going to do it in 48 minutes. I'm going to try it in 52 minutes. So where everyone's sitting there holding my legs and I can see, I can't believe you're doing this. It was easy. It wasn't a talent. It was just something I could do. But how I was going to craft it in the 10,000 was the important part. I had to do it in 10 hours. I know what my times were. I've since forgotten that, okay? But whatever they were, I'd call it within a minute, and I'd hit within a minute, okay? 48 minutes, right? As we got close, they would tell me, so 1,000 Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, off Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Did that for 12 weeks. The last week I did Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. I figured I'm close to 50,000 in practice. Let's do 2,500 just to loosen up and get all the kinks out. Let's call that time on Thursday, and then 10 days off. Because from the first time I did it, remember the thing with the rear end okay? So it's now in my head that don't overtrain, undertrain. Okay, you've already called the time. You know what you're doing. You've done this twice before. Do it exactly like you did it last time. So I did 2,500 on a Thursday. Okay, so the whole next week I don't do anything. The week after that I don't do anything. And then it's Saturday at 9 o'clock in the morning. I sit down and I do the 10,000. Because that's how I train for it, right? There's no book. The guy who did the 14.4 took breaks. And you could take it in aggregate. So you could go 10 minutes and then, every hour you could, you go 2 hours and take 10 minutes off. We never tried. I didn't care about the Guinness Book of Records. This was about me and my mom and putting that to bed and thanking her. So from that point, I started a business in college. My best friend's friend was this is where the money and the success that people perceive as success anyways, comes in. My best friend's father was a Holocaust survivor. He had a tattoo on his arm. He had a brother who was there too. And they both got out of it. And he was a worker and he was a great guy, but he never smiled. And Rob, my friend, was a kid who tried wrestling. And He had to lose 2 pounds one night. And I'm like, Rob, shut up and just go to bed, dude. You lose 2 pounds sleeping. Eat whatever you want tonight. Toughen up a little bit. So, you're just coming from a different world, right? And I think his father saw something in me that he didn't see in us, not so much in Rob, but from the athletic side, this independence that I had. Rob's my best friend, right? But he wasn't going to be a wrestler, right? And I think the father saw that I was a hustler, right? And Rob was a hustler. And so he gave me some stuff to bring down to school, and I sold it. And I opened a package, or a bunch of watches and stuff in there. It was an invoice, and it says, due in 10 days, right? An invoice, due in 10 days. I'd never seen an invoice. I'm like, well, it'll be against the law if I don't pay him in 10 days. I'm going to go to jail. He said, sell it and then bring him back the money. Now this is a whole different thing. Well, unbeknownst to me, they got a memo bill it, right? I mean, that's his intention, and he didn't explain it, but of course that's what he meant. But there's an invoice I'm looking at that looks like the first legal document I've ever seen in my life, and I owe this man $900. I got to pay him. I sell as much as I can, get $900, get in my old Pinto, drive back to Chicago. The first week that the school was back, and like a Tuesday morning, and at 9 o'clock I'm waiting. He opens the door. He said, "What are you doing here? You just left last week." I said, "Mr. Nerdick, I this invoice thing, and I'm here a couple days early," and then he hits the floor. He drops to his knees. He's laughing so hard he's crying. He's crying. The man is like beside himself because he immediately put everything together and thought that I thought that would be against the law for me if I didn't pay him in 10 days.
God bless you.
He goes, "Jeff, look, you're wired a little different here. We're going to fill your car up, okay? This is all my junk. I've got 2 of these left, 4 of those left. I'm cleaning out the slots because it's not worth having the goods in there. Sell it when you come back. Give me half the money for it. I don't need it anyways. I trust you." Well, so one thing leads to another. So by the time I left Alabama, we had a warehouse business, an auction business. My senior year in college, I made $250,000, 1979, living in an apartment.
That's a lot of money in today's dollars.
Bob, it was. I had an apartment with utilities was $125.
There you
2
go.
bedrooms.
There you go.
Man.
I was a king. I went to McFarland Mall. I'm walking around. I said, I took a salary. I don't know why, $660 a month. I don't know why I did that. And Steve, my partner, Silver, who's a big part of my story, went on to build one of the biggest furniture companies. He could drive a truck. I couldn't drive a truck. I didn't know how to do the stick shift. So he says, "I'll do the warehousing and we'll drive the U-Haul up to Chicago. He'll drive it and it'll be half." I said, "Fine." So we drive up Chicago in a U-Haul that we would pay a guy $50 to break the odometer so we didn't have to pay the miles. And then we drive up Chicago with the back door open, and anyone hitchhiking could jump in. We leave the door open. Might be cold, but we get $10, $5, whatever. Pull into a gas station. He'd pull the U-Haul between the gas station and the pump. He had a wrench. He'd put $5 in, wrench it back to 0, and put another 5 in while I was in getting directions, right? Like, "Steve, why is gas so cheap?" He goes, "Don't worry about it." I says, "I got that." I said, "You really did that?" He wrenched it back to 0. Okay. So then we get pulled over by cops. We looked like we were bringing refugees into the country. You had 20 people in the back of a U-Haul singing "Kumbaya," hoping that they lived through this. And every once in a while, when we were pulling into like a Stuckey's to get something to eat, he'd hit the brake real hard, and you'd hear these bodies rumbling towards the front of the empty truck on the way up. We weren't the greatest kids in the world, but we were. There's nothing perfect about it. He was angry. I was angry. We were real angry, and we were from. He was from the Northeast. I'm from the Midwest. We're in Tuscaloosa, Alabama in the mid-'70s. It wasn't really good if you were black or you're Jewish. It wasn't very good if you didn't have a Southern background. I didn't understand it. I didn't get it. But Hank was a good friend. He gave me my first $300 loan that I have framed from the First National Bank of Tuscaloosa, which probably came out of his pocket. I doubt he went to loan committee. And I still talk to him to this day. He's doing well for 93. He made it to our wedding, Ruby and I, Harry, our wedding a couple years ago. I flew him in private. He felt like King Farouk right in Ocean Reef is the only way I could get him there. And he's got a lovely wife, Jane, who's 20 years younger than he is. And then Steve and I and him at the wedding, I mean, we're just all bawling our eyes out. I mean, we've had this life that you read about. No, we're not Bill Gates. No, we're not the people you read about in magazines. There's never anything about any of that. that meant anything to me, right? So the mentors in the 60s were the guy who owned the Texaco station, Midge, who gave me my first set of golf clubs and taught me how to play golf and said, you walk up to the ball and you hit it. You don't wait, okay? I play golf fast to this day. I caddied for him. I caddied for the guy who owned a local golf club before it became a Park District course. They saw something in me. They said, look, the carts come in at 9 o'clock at night. I got no one who wants to stay until 9 o'clock at night. Now, I was going back to before I was sophomore year in high school, right? It was kind of innocent back then. I liked to work. I had my own shoe shine sign up, a public golf course. You want your shoe shine? Fine. You want your clubs clean? Fine. These are the prices. I was at the club. Most of the time I slept in a golf cart that night in the barn because the carts had to come in, they had to get washed and cleaned, and they had to get filled with gas. They had to get ready for the morning. Someone had to come out at 5:30 to stage them. I'll do it. Okay. Then I could hit golf balls for free. Really? Like, are you serious? A golf lesson was $6 back then, right? But I could literally hit range balls, as many as I wanted, until Tony Lamanna, who was the pro, I had a lesson. And I would go sit on the crest of this little hill. It was about 140 yards out. And I had to bring every ball back. So it was 30 balls was a lesson, half-hour lesson. If I brought 29 back, he docked me. So on the crest of the hill, if somebody, you'd always hope it was a lady because it was a guy. He could hit it too far. He had to run down and get that ball before he hit the next one so you could see where it went, right? That's why you take golf lessons. You don't hit them all straight or you wouldn't need a teacher. So I made $3,500, and I remember going vividly to the First National Bank at Deerfield, Illinois. And I didn't tell my mother or anything. It just was nothing to me. And every time they typed the extra dollars into that passport savings, right, the book, I got a little woody, I got excited. I got so excited. It was like, okay, total, boom, plus, new total. Oh, so every week when I had time, if they give me Mondays or whatever, I go to the bank, bring my money. And at the end of the summer, I had $3,500, 1971. And I wanted to surprise my mom. And if you had $100 to my mother, you were rich, right? Okay. My grandfather bought her a piano. That was a big deal. It was probably $400, So I said, Mom, I want to show you something. I opened a passbook savings account. And I said, Mom, look at this. And I didn't get the reaction I thought I was going to get. I'm so proud of you. That's unbelievable. I swear to my hand of God, she said, don't show that to your father.
Wow.
It'll be gone. That was her first instinct. Do not show it to him. So I didn't get any encouragement back or anything. But guess what was new in my life? A scorecard. Okay? How did he keep score in my world? Add those numbers. Okay? I'm going to be independent one day. No one's going to tell me what to do. I'm going to do it the way I want to do it, the way I want to do it. I'm going to treat people right. I'm going to pay people a lot of money, and if they don't get it right, then I'm not going to let them stay there. Okay? We're going to work hard. We're going to go hard. And for 2 years out of college, I kind of stuck to what I did, but a hybrid. My grandfather begged me to reconnect with my father, who he had never reconnected with. And he had this water company in Chicago. And he said, I want you to work for your father for a little while. Learn the grocery business, and then you can peddle on the side. Well, Chicago was full of these independent supermarkets that had 3 stores, 4 stores. Every one of those guys could make a decision. If you went to Publix, you had to go to a big office. There was maybe 6 months later, you get the item in stock. But I could go and have grill scrubbers that were closeouts from my friend, Mr. Nerdick, and put them in a box and put them on display. And I knew these guys, and they knew me from coming in every week to, manage shelves and stuff. And I'd say, I'm going to sell you these 144 grill scrubbers. And I said, if you sell 51%, if you sell half and one, you own them and you pay me. Because you're going to sell the other. If they're slow, I'll just pick them up and pay me for what you sold. So I'm making $2,000, $3,000, $4,000 a week. And my father's paying me $1,000 a month. Okay? And then I asked him for a raise after the first year. I was going to the second year, and I knew I was going to leave after that. And I got a car. I think that was the big deal. So I had a car that was free and $1,000 a month, right? But I didn't care because I'm making, all this other money. And he says, spend more money on your American Express card. I go, that's not a raise. I mean, I want to save my money. He says, no, it's important that you look like you have everything, you know. It's more important to look like you have it, you know, drive a Cadillac, this, that, all this nonsense. So as we roll forward, there was a moment in his business that I knew was going to change his business that he didn't know that I knew, by being close to the ground, by being involved and active and knowing a lot of people and having a lot of friends in the business and being perceptive, that I said, this is going nowhere, and I quit. I started Purity Wholesale Grocers in 1982. I had a $50,000 that I saved from college, and I started the business as a closeout company to do the same thing that I was doing at the hybrid. And then one day somebody said, well, you're diverting goods. I said, what does that mean? He says, well, we've got one guy, and he works out of his mother's basement in New Jersey, and he sells us coffee. And I go, Folgers coffee? He says, yeah. But what happens is, like in the East Coast of the United States, they promote 1 pound coffee. Okay, now it's not pounds anymore. Now it's ounces, and the ounces get smaller for the same price. As we know, that's called a price increase without raising the price. So I'm going to call it 1, 2, 3 pound because that's what I remember, okay? So 1 pound coffee sold great on the East Coast because people lived in apartments and, you know, small space. They shopped frequently. That was always on promotion. But in Chicago, they never, ever promoted 1 pound, 2 and 3 pound. They still sold it. They sold it in truckloads, but they never promoted it. So I start buying coffee from Stop and Shop in Boston at $46, and they're paying $60 in Chicago, right? And the truckload was $60,000. I didn't have enough money to buy it, and then carry the receivable for 30 days because I'd have to wait until the check came in before I could buy another truck. So I found out about a guy named Milt Canner that was doing this. Just started in Dayton, Ohio. He was a character. He died 12 years ago in his 80s. And he was kind of a cool guy, competitor, mentor. I liked him, you know. His son runs the business, I think, today. I don't know if David's still involved. David is a friend that, you know, I don't talk to very often, but we're competitors, but I respect him very much. And my son and his son were best friends growing up. Who would have known that in the same town? And I've always been kind of proud of that. But Milt was up. You know, he'd say what he wanted, and he was like Grandpa Charlie, you know what I mean? So I didn't have the money to sell the goods directly to the customer, so Milt was doing what I was doing, but I would wholesale to him. So I had 3-store chains that got all this extra money, more so than the big chains. If you gave a lot of money, if you said to a big chain in Chicago, I got a great deal on A1 steak sauce, they might take 20 trucks. They don't want to do 20 trucks like that. They want to do 1 or 2 to make their numbers. So they go to the guy with 3 or 4 stores, and they give him what's called street money, over and above what's in the book from the wholesaler. And so this is where I made my bones. I see all these deals are different everywhere. And then I see, well, my gosh, that's just Chicago. You know, I can buy it from this wholesaler, sell it to that guy in the same town. This is multi-billion-dollar industry. I'm a fly. So I'd sell Milt, and I'd carve out $2,500, $3,000. Boom, right? And this guy spent more time trying to figure out where I got the goods from, okay, than making money on it. And I said, Milt, you got to stop this. My sources are never going to give me up, okay? If you call one of my guys again, I'm never going to call you again. He says, all right, Jeff, come work for me. I'll pay you $350,000 to run my sales. I said, I just got a $250,000 line of credit. Milt, I think I got to do this on my own. I got an opportunity. He says, $250,000 ain't shit. It's 4 trucks of coffee. Again, that rejection. The anger comes out. So we built it to $1.6 billion, $150 million line of credit. At the desk at 6, no exceptions. Okay, for buying and selling. If you pass, go home for the day and think about it. If you can't get there by 6, go home and think about it. Tomorrow, if you show up at 6:01 again, you're fired. Okay, I'm there at 6 because there's no computers. I got to rewrite all the sales on my notebook paper. Okay, if I got to be up until 2 in the morning, I got to rewrite everything I did. Then I got to get ready to hand the loads to someone and explain to them they're going to dispatch this. But I was very, very specific about this, that from 8 o'clock until 5 o'clock, I bought and sold. Don't talk to me about anything unless the building's on fire. That's what I do. I could sit for hours without going to the bathroom, knowing the bathroom was 6 feet away, but my eyes were crossing because you were on a roll. And it was just a wrestling pace. It was a wrestling mentality. It was like, I'm running circles around everybody, not because I'm better. It's how I grew up. It was ingrained in me. There was no other way. There was no other option. So, you know, I could do $700,000 in a day. I just didn't have the money. And at this one banker in Chicago, Walter Maker, very quiet guy, very hard to read, gave me my first $1 million asset-based loan. And so I went from 6 to 26 million just because of that. And I told him, I looked him in the eye, I said, I'll never leave your bank for an interest rate dispute. Whatever you want to charge me, just charging me like 5 over prime. I said, whatever you want to charge me, charge me. And he just brought the rates down over time. I never negotiated with him. I said, you made me. And I said to him one day, am I your fair-haired boy? He goes, nah, Jeff, you're not. I go, oh, Walter. Walter. As I live and breathe, Walter. Now, imagine how scared I was the first time I meet him. And that's 20 years later. I'm in my 40s, and I'm coming out of my shell as a person, you know. In front of people, I never liked that. Remember, with the microphone, my microphone was, I had a headset that was very uncommon back in the day. And it was a makeshift phone that was attached to my head with a speaker in front of it. And then they came out with these headsets that people wore like this that were much smaller, that just covered one ear and came down. Now, because I can't hear out of this ear, there was a glass window between me and the secretary out front. And the reason I wanted it is if I was getting a call in, remember, there was no voicemail. And she would type in, you know, about 5 years in, there would be a computer, and she would type in, so-and-so's on the phone. Give her a thumbs up. That means I'm going to get off this call. But I'm not going to let the guy on the phone know that I'm rushing. But I would make the call kind of go away without offending him, right? Or down, which meant I was going to call him back. And I had this thing, and I had this booming voice that everybody loved. And my customers, you know, yeah, I could sit here all day and tell you about this, which you don't want. But the reality is that the combination of my voice, my background, my love for the Wizard of Oz made me be the Wizard of Oz, right? I'm behind a curtain. You can't get to me. You like my voice. You like that I have a gift for gab. I'm so much more comfortable when you're not looking at me, right? Because I'm so self-aware, I'm profiling everybody to the point where there's 3 people in a room while having a conversation, which it took me a long time to drop that. It's hard. It's hard being you sometimes. You know what I mean?
I do.
No matter who you are, it's like you just want to pull that off one day. And so that's how I looked at it. You're wearing the mask during the day, but how are you authentic then? Are you real? Are you fake? Are you full of it? And I said, you know, I'm authentic in the sense that I care about the people I'm dealing with. I care about the customer. I care about my business. I care about my employees. I care about my reputation. But there's gamesmanship in life. You just don't run around naked for a reason. There's a reason where over time people said, throw some clothes on, okay? Or don't be so direct to somebody and offend them. You know, have some class. Well, where does this all come from? It comes from the caveman with the bopping the girl over the head and taking her over in a cave. That was acceptable, not today, right? But we evolve as people, right? And we grow as people. So, yeah, I learned how to become a survivalist behind that microphone. I would throw up every morning before my day started. My numbers, I had to hit the number I posted on Wednesday night for the week. I worked day and night. My treat was from 10 o'clock at night, I'd watch a TV show. That was it. Okay. I'd stop at the same McDonald's every night, drive through it. It was easier, pick up whatever they had, drive home, eat it, go to bed. Right. My lunch break was 11:30 to 1. I didn't eat or drink anything, touch anything until noon when I went to the snuggery, because I'm a wrestler. And you have to suffer every day. Every day. You have to suffer to be good. So I wouldn't eat or drink. I mean, not even not a sip of water. Absolutely no way. And then at noon, I'd have a gallon and a half iced tea. My eyeballs would pop out of my head, and it was back to it. And then as you started going from east to west, the customers were there until 7, 8 o'clock on the West Coast, my time, 4 or 5 o'clock their time. Then you start hiring people, and that's when everything goes kind of off the rails, right? Then your personality is now interjected in other people. When you're in a room with 5 or 6 people, I can create a pace. But when they're now with 70, 80 reps, and they want me, well, you got to go put a suit and tie on and go back out there. I almost had a nervous breakdown. I changed. Okay. I went to the depths of lows. I was successful financially. I was good, but by 1990, 91, that 8 or 10 year run, I wanted to be on the phone. I just want to talk to the customer. You're putting me back in a suit and tie, and all I could remember was doing that for my father. And it took all my kryptonite away. And I go into a meeting with these guys with a suit and tie, and I wasn't effective. And I could see it. I wasn't, on a phone, on a dime, I could get a guy to do what I needed him to do, right? For all the right reasons. Remember, I'm selling a product that's already selling itself. I'm selling it at a price below what they're at. Great. So all I have to do is sell the product. I don't have to do the BS of selling brooms, mops, sewing notions, the stuff that I used to do for him with water. And I started taking Prozac and some other stuff to, calm me down. And I just started living in my head that, what I'm doing is so difficult. And I became a caricature of myself. Like, yeah, this is really hard and everything. And, people are blowing me up with, oh, he's great. And I don't understand what they're talking about. I'm only great when I'm on the phone. And I didn't run the business. I didn't know how to run the business. I had people running the business. And I started sucking up to them a little bit. I'm losing the whole sense of self, And that's happened periodically. And I really, really struggled. I mean, through the 90s with my kids, I didn't straw. I had a great time. That was my coaching again. I hated the business, just like I hated wrestling, because I did it. I built a company. The company was huge, blah, 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 blah. Everyone's telling me how great I am. I hate it. I just want to be on the phone. I just want my friends back. I want to call Dick Lewick at Gateway Foods. I want to call Roger Anderson at Gateway Foods, who I still talk to this day. They're in the late 70s. They were line buyers. They weren't VPs. They'd shut the buying department down so I could go up there and play golf with them once a year. You know what that feels like today? You know how good that feels, that they liked you that much? That if you made a mistake, you corrected it. They knew they could count on you every day. Then all the nonsense of the business went away. If you made a mistake, instead of being indicted for it, they assumed you correct it. And that's what the truth is. That's the truth. Yeah? So, I did all this and I sat behind a microphone. And then if I'm really fast forwarding so that I don't bore you to death, I had a lot of operations. 2015, I'm kind of semi in the business. I get diagnosed with prostate cancer. I said, all right, I want it out. Find the right guy, and a guy named Vittel, and Vit Patel, who's become a good friend, in Orlando. He's done 20,000 of these now. First one to ever do it. As a matter of fact, he just did one in Africa while he was seated in Orlando. He's in Orlando, and they have the PAs, the physician's assistants that wire him up, the guy, and then he operates the crane, so to speak, right? So I get it, and I have it removed, and all my margins are fine, and everything's fine, and you go through 6 or 8 weeks of incontinence and other things. It's not a big deal. All I could think about how easy it was. I've had 5 knee replacements in my left knee, only to find out after the 4th one, done by the president of Cleveland Clinic Hospital, after I gave him 4 days after I gave him a $2 million donation to name the orthopedic department, the Levitetz Department of Orthopedic Surgery. Is this not the funniest thing in the world? Hand him a check. The next day I get an infection. I end up back in the hospital. The guy is like, he sees a ghost. I said, I'm not taking the money back. Just fix me. Just fix me. Right? Well, he has the good vision to afterwards check my blood levels for 6 months, only to find out that, hey, guess what? You got leukemia too.
Wow.
All right, what do we got to do? Well, we got to drill a hole in your hip to get a bone marrow sample. We're going to put you out. You're going to have to be here for the rest of the day. I said, I got stuff to do. Just do it. Go. So you're not going to like it. We'll give you, what do you want? Sedative. I said, I was in shock. Yeah. So I went there. I take a drill about that long. They drill it right into your bone marrow. And all you smell burning and zzz. I didn't feel a thing. Second time, like 2 years later when I had it done, I felt everything. Oh. But I was in a state of shock. I didn't feel it. Right. So that wasn't a big deal. Let's find out the right medication. Let's go. This is nothing. I can eat. I can do anything I want to do whenever I want to do it. Cut my arm off, cut my leg off, whatever it takes, just let's go. Okay? Then you'll learn, well, you get a knee replacement, you can't run anymore. Okay, but you can walk. You can get on an elliptical. You can get on other things. You can master those. In your head, you can come up with your own mini merit triathlon, right? So I get leukemia. The medicine comes in a little bag, cross, skull and cross and yellow and black and danger all over I got an idea. I'm gonna take up a sport I hate, swimming. The idea of getting in a pool makes me sick to my stomach. Okay, there's an indoor gym right next door to my office called Athletic Club. They got an indoor gym, fancy schmancy place. I join. I'll get a lock or two. I don't want to see anyone. I walk in. 9 o'clock every day, I start swimming. I can't swim. I mean, I'm coming down. The back end of me is coming down. I can't turn my head. I've had all these discs replaced in my neck, 3 of them, right? 34 orthopedic operations I've had. Who cares? I'm alive. I don't have liver cancer. I don't have any, you know what I mean? And so, anyways, I found that you could wear a full face mask with a snorkel, and I could pretend I was snorkeling. I could pretend that it was a little reef down there. And then I got fins, and I put them on, and they kept me level. And I read every book I could read about swimming. And then I said, you got to read every book to find one thing out of each book that resonates with you. It's not the book, it's the one thing. And I remember them saying, well, you're a barge until you become a vessel, right? So, oh, wow, that makes sense. Like if you're a barge, you go slow, but if you can get up on the side, and it's the way you get up on your side is you reach a little farther than you're supposed to reach, like you're reaching for a rope for help. Then I get into it. Next thing you know, I'm doing 66 laps nonstop, right? And I have to wear an earplug because I got an open hole in the ear. So the earplug, guess where that goes? In that plastic danger cancer bag that the pills come in. And every time I open, I put that in there, I seal it, and I say something not so nice that I'm not going to say to the bag, okay? And I'm going to go do it. And so, when you're facing anything that's tough or, whatever it is, you stare it down and you look at it like a cigarette on the floor and you stomp it out. And you beat it while it's beating you. And I read once while I was in a room where you go for when you have leukemia. It's not a cancer place, but infectious disease. They need to change the name of that because when you go there psychologically, you're gone, right? And then the guy is a different doctor who has had no history with you. He's just managing your infectious disease, which is a knee replacement infection. And I remember opening a magazine that says, when you reach the end of your rope, tie a knot in it and hang on. And I that was one of those moments where I said, what that means to me is don't fall any further. Everyone who tells you to be tough, that doesn't work. Don't be tough, be weak. But if you really want to see what it's like to be weak, this is what I would do. If you want me to, I'll do this. I'll buy you a dunce cap, okay? And I'll get you a little stool. And I'll get balloons and streamers, and we'll have a pity party for you. If you really want to have that, if you really want to go to the depths of hell and feel sorry for yourself I hear the same thing over and over again. I'd like you to see what it actually looks like to have a pity party. How absolutely pitiful it is. Hence the name. Oh, I'd never do that. Well, you're doing it right now. You're just not wearing a cap, dude. Okay, so you got to find something that's going to turn you around. Get up, move, walk. My God, if you can't do anything, get up and walk. Okay, you're taking steps towards something different, right? The only way you can change anything is to face it down and go. There's got to be that clarity. And in my business, there was no plan. You bought and sold stuff. The plan was the business came. The business came. And then you manage it. You don't look at paper to manage your business. You look at the guys that create what's on that paper. So I've recently, tie it all in, I've recently come back into my business. My wife, who I married 3 years ago, much younger than me, has changed my outlook on everything. That basically, you need to work because you love it. You're pretending that you're happy. You're happy with me. We're happy together. And you need to do the things you like doing. And some recent events made me go in and change the structure of my business. And I go in 2 days a week, and we have a real estate company that we started with nothing. My son wanted a chocolate factory, and I bought a piece of property for him and developed it and liked it. And here we are 25 office buildings later, and we own them. We don't pay with debt. Going back to the old school, I don't want to owe anyone any money. I just don't. It's just not in my DNA to do that. And that corrects you, and lost on this generation and anything that comes next is what you have to remember is you have to be accountable for what you do. And you can't sweep your mistakes under the floor. You have to own them. So you have to pay back your debt. And we had a very famous thing that happened in 2006-07. And that's when everyone was getting 100% mortgages because these mortgage companies were borrowing money. It was the fifth or sixth cut of the same money. And mortgage companies were making $50,000 for a loan origination fee because it was a 100% loan. There was no consequence to it. And everyone thought they were going to be millionaires on real estate. It was the Wild West again. There was no rationale behind it. But it was so big and so powerful and it affected so many people that when I heard someone say that their house was in short sale one day, I'm like, son of a gun. Wow, they're going to make themselves feel good about a mistake. You know what a short sale is? You're upside down on your mortgage. But instead of saying you're in bankruptcy, it's fashionable. It's called something now. Short sale. You're the victim? No one put a gun to your head and said, borrow $1 million on a $1 million home that you thought you'd flip for $2 million. You look really, really good when you're good. You look really, really bad when you make a mistake. And life is a series of mistakes. That's all it is. That are small enough not to break you into a million different pieces. And learn from those mistakes and build on it. So if a kid gets a 90 all through school, and I think I've told Harry this, I think I have, he's an A student. Even though it's A- on the report card, there's no parent in the history of mankind that's going to go to a cocktail party and brag about their A- student. It's got an A, that's all that matters. But what the A- guy gets, Bob, that you get and Harry gets is you get to get 10% of your life wrong and still get an A. So if you don't get out there and do a lot of things and make a lot of mistakes, you're never going to propel yourself to greatness. You'll never get there. So if the mistakes are equal in weight as the victories and you get 9 right and 1 wrong, you're still at 90. But if you're a computer geek and you got to get everything right because you're afraid of getting anything wrong, you'll end up working for me in the accounting department or in the IT department. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. But in my office, I was in Italy a month ago with my wife and my in-laws. And there's this famous place called Capri, and it's got all these fancy shops and everything. And in there, they had all these beautiful ceramic things, right? And they're famous for lemons there. So they got this pair of these giant lemons. And they're not cheap and they're not overly expensive, but I said, I got to have those. And my father-in-law, who's younger than me, looks at me and says, why are you getting those lemons? I said, I've always had a pair. Now I got 2. Okay. And I said, if these come and they're not smashed into a million pieces, that pair is going right up on my credenza in my office. And if people ask me, I say, I grew a pair. And I continue to grow a pair every day.
I love it.
Because you know what? If I'm not still learning and getting better. So to wrap it up, this is what I think. I think that people need to talk more. People need to get their stories out more. People that have gotten to 65 and won need to accept that they stood on the podium. They are the only ones that know whether they won gold, silver, or bronze. And if they still feel like it's a bronze or a silver, get off the podium, go back to work. I've always felt like I was not a gold yet. And that's something that my wife has helped me fulfill, is that I'm going for the gold now. I've never been smarter at 68. I'm still alive, which is a miracle. Okay. I've had cancer 3 times. I've gone through unimaginable bouts of 7, 8 years of 3. Last year I had 3 operations. I had 2 back operations and my elbow rebuilt. And the elbow was like an afterthought. It happened in between the 2. I said, I might as well get this over with so I can play golf next year. And the back surgery, you read about, they're like, well, look, we have a cane and we have a walker, right? Walker and some other stuff. And you got to use this on your toilet and everything. I walked out of there. I never used a cane. And I'm in Wyoming before we bought our house here. I said, I got to get out of Wyoming. No, I can't live in Wyoming in the wintertime. We have a long hallway, just walk back and forth until they let me go on a treadmill. I went on a treadmill a mile every 3 hours. Boom, 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 boom. Fell in love with walking, came here, walk every day. How would I learn those things if it wasn't for the defeat? Right? Who would ever, I'm walking. Like the absolute worst thing, it's just like, who walks? I do. I walk. And then I listen to music after I come to Harry's. And I got my routine, and I tell everyone now, I'm not a morning person anymore. Call me after 2. I'll give you all my attention, but until 2, the world's mine. Me, my friends, my wife, whatever I want to do, hit golf balls, whatever. At 2 o'clock, you want to go until 2 in the morning, I'll be good. I'll be ready for you. But I got to be prepared. So at 1 o'clock, I get ready, just kind of calm down, rewrite my notes, look at all the notes I have on everybody. I don't call them every day and say, do you remember this? No, I have days of the week. I call you to go over your notes. And I tell every one of them, when you're good, my notes become your notes. Meaning, when we start this process and you're new, I have nothing but notes until they're your notes. And then I have no notes and you're telling me things that I need to know without me having to tell you. Okay? Don't ever be the type of person that has to tell you somebody the type of person they are. You meet a couple different types of people in this world. Well, I'm the type of guy. Well, I'm the type of guy that doesn't need to tell you the type of guy I am. I'm just going to be the type of guy I am. And for God's sakes, don't ever say, let me be honest with you. What, is this a treat? Is this a special day for me? You know how many people I deal with that come in that pitch something and they go, let me be honest with you. And I go, let me stop you right there. I'm going to help you here. This is wrong based on the way society is today, but that's stupid. Don't ever say that to anybody again. It offends me. Don't say that. Just always be honest with everybody. You never have to say that, okay? And then by all means, I had Handshake University for a long time. Handshake University was basically when I was teaching wrestling to kids. I got a bigger kick out of teaching them a couple, moves that would get them a little better. So, they were never going to be great, but we had fun, right? So they had to run the gauntlet every day. So at the end of practice, they'd line up and they would shake every coach's hand. And I'd say, look at you, look someone in the eye, you squeeze their hand like you're going to rip it off and you smile. And you only have to do that every time you meet somebody every day for the rest of your life. That's all you got to do. And if you do that, you're special. Because basically, if I shake your hand right now, like I'm doing, looking you in the eye, what I'm saying is, you are meeting me. Okay? That's what I'm saying. Okay? And that's the deal. Okay? And once you've set that, when you sit down with anybody, there's just a little bit more respect. And generations that come after us, they live based on no news is good news, Bob. Meaning that if you're sitting with a group of people and you say something that probably wasn't very nice to say, and you get up to go to the bathroom, and your friends are saying, wow, what a jerk. And you come back to the table and no one calls you out on it, well, you think it's okay. No one said anything. You got to be able to apologize. Go, I know I didn't say the right thing. And I owe you all an apology. And that's a man or a woman, whatever you are. You got to own your stuff. And, I think that we're learning that. I think we're learning that as a country. I think freedom is everything. I think the United States is the greatest country in the world. I love paying taxes. I love coaching people. You know how many people sit this locker room where I swam. I was amazed by these guys. I called a guy out. He was a European guy, and he would talk to another guy at 10 o'clock in the morning after I was done swimming. I'm always amazed. How do these guys work at 10 o'clock in the morning? They're at the gym. I felt like saying, tell me what you do, and I'm going to get into that business, and I'm going to crush you. I'll crush you into little pieces. I don't care if you have 10 car dealerships. If you say I couldn't, then I'm going to have to do it. And I'm going to crush you, and there'll be a day when I come back and you will be crushed. Because if you're working at 10 in the morning, dude, you're no stud. You're a fish. That's what we called wrestlers that laid on their back, fish. You're a fish. So one day these two are talking about, Ferrari and this and my car broke down. And I go, do you guys ever work? He goes, sir, what do you say? No, it's 10 o'clock in the morning. I said, when I did this is about lunchtime for me. You guys are just getting up, just rubbing out your eyes, beefing up your muscles. I said, nah, You guys aren't going to make it big. You might make it, but you're not going to make it big. You're not where you need to be. You're not where you need to be. Oh, yeah, you're the little guy with the swimming mask. Yeah, you're the guy who swims with the mask on. Yeah, it's me. If you really want to get to know me, I felt like saying, tell me what you do for a living.
And I'll crush you.
I will crush you. Because the one thing I couldn't do it was on the mat. But in life, the idea is not to beat somebody 2-1 in business. You beat them 2-1, they think they got another chance. Because you're going to wrestle them again. If you have competition, you're going to compete with them all the time. So you're literally wrestling and winning, but you're losing because the idea of winning is to crush the opponent so that their will and their mindset is when they come back on the mat, they've already lost. It's over before it starts. Okay? That's how good you want to be. And then you get to end up from Chicago, Illinois, Hobe Sound, Florida, where a guy welcomes you with open arms, Harry. The next thing you know Harry, who's Harry and the natives. Not only do you know him, you're having breakfast with him every day. And, because of that and my wife and my dear friends and people that care enough to want to do this, what a gift to be able to tell any part of this story to anybody who's willing to listen that I don't think is any kind of big deal. I'll never believe it is. And I'll believe that the best part of my life I still have in front of me because I feel like I still have something I have to do. I have to do it. And since I've come back into the business, it's been like everything's changed. The light bulb's off. It's just like there's no dimness anymore. It's bright. Everything's just where I want it, and I just want to work and I want to go. And my wife has to, hold me back a little bit because I'm a pretty intense guy.
We figured that, didn't we, gentlemen?
Yeah. Oh yeah,
that kind of came out. But what you think is small, the world sees as big.
Yes.
It's normally we try to sum things up, but you hit it on the screws, as they say in the game of golf, right? You just smashed it on the screws. You hit every point that we've shared, and we've had the privilege of riding along with so many great people, and everything that you said, I was like, yes. There was not a no. All signs point to yes.
Closing it out, this is the last thing I'll say. I did get a little of a kick out of this. I was inducted in the National Wrestling Hall of Fame as an Outstanding American in 2002. It wasn't a great time in my life. Okay, I just had my second knee replacement, and it was 2 months later. I lost a lot of weight. I wasn't in a good place mentally. I really wanted to enjoy it, and I begged them to do it the following year. But Myron Roderick, who ran the National Wrestling Hall of Fame in Stillwater, Oklahoma, where his office was the same exact place where my high school wrestling coach left my high school to go work. Okay? He left my high school in 1974 to take a job as the executive director for USA Wrestling in Stillwater, Oklahoma, in the office that's inside the National Wrestling Hall of Fame where I was enshrined, okay, and he couldn't make it that night. But even in my worst performance of speaking I think I ever had was that night. I should have just cut to the quick, but I'm looking out at 500 people, and I was able to close it well, and I said, I'm sitting here, and this might be one of the only times I ever felt normal in my life. I said, I feel like I'm looking out at the land of cauliflower. Every one of you has a cauliflower ear. I started my life with a cauliflower ear, and I feel like Dorothy, who went off to meet the wizard. I think I've come to the land of Oz, to the land of cauliflower, where we all belong, and I thank you for that. And then in 2012, I got to get inducted into the Illinois Hall of Fame with my coach that had long forgotten the story. And when I reminded him the story, I was the keynote speaker, and I begged him not to go first. I said, let me go last. Let all these coaches have their due. And it was lights out. I mean, everyone was crying. And then about half an hour later, when he came to speak, he came up to me, bawling his eyes out, and he said, Jeff, I want to tell you something. He says, the hardest two people, now this is an Olympian, this is a national champion, this is an Iowa national champion, this is the best of the best of the best. Revered by everybody. He's run every major organization in sports, from USA Water Skiing to USA Wrestling, revered by everyone. And all he wanted to do is make kids better. And he said, I was tougher on you and my son, Jeff, than anybody else, and I don't know why. It happens for a reason. And he said in front of that group of people, where the Illinois Hall of Fame is the most organic because that's where you were, he says, I've never coached anyone more important than Jeff Levitetz.
Wow.
And so I owe him my best. And since I don't think I got gold yet, I'm going back for gold. I want to thank you guys for this. I really appreciate it.
Wow.
Thank you so much.
I almost made it all the way through without crying. All right. If you're out there and you're listening, we need to hear your story. And you might think your story's not special, but when we share it, you'd be amazed how it touches people. And what you just did, and also, you know, Jeff says his age. If you saw Jeff, the guy is fit. He looks like he's 50. And he looks
better be. My wife's 28. I better.
I'm pretty sure he could still sweep you and put you on your back. So we thank you. You guys are out there. Let us know. Come on the show. We're going to have some fun, and nothing but respect. And thank you.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
That was great.
Hello, we're recorded from Harry and the Natives Restaurant in Hope Sound, Florida. It's a family restaurant. My family's run it 73 years. It's an 85-year-old restaurant, and just come and see us sometimes. Thank you. This is Bob.
And we're upstairs in the Tiki Hut, so you can come in, and we'd love to have you come up and tell your story. I'm with O'Donnell Impact Windows and Storm Protection, and we do, I know it sounds confusing, but we do impact windows and storm protection. And our slogan is, and please remember at O'Donnell, it's our family protecting your family. So I promise you, if you use us, we'll never embarrass you. If you refer us, we'll never embarrass you. We get the job done right. Thanks for listening.
Thank you.